a variety of clients also gives you more opportunities to secure more grants, which equals more impact. Beyond your community, some freelance grant writers love to focus on one cause area instead and reach a multitude of clients around the world or the nation, serving that specific cause. You can literally decide what change you want to see in the world and then specialize in writing those types of grants or working with those types of organizations and increasing your skills to help them specifically. If you are new to grant writing, you may be wondering how much grant writing experience you need, certifications, and so much more. And if you have grant writing experience but are new to running a business, you might be wondering how much freelance grant writers get paid, how hard it is to find nonprofit clients, how to price your services, if nonprofits can even pay, and how many grants you have to write. The thought of writing grant applications and helping causes you care about getting funding is exciting. You also dream of working from home on part-time hours and to be appreciated for what you do. You may be looking even to retire from a nonprofit job, quit a job to work from home, or you may be a stay-at-home mom while earning to some part-time money would be great. There are many reasons why people become freelance grant writers, and in my opinion, it is one of the best jobs in the world. I've been freelance grant writing for nearly 20 years, and I've been writing grants for more than 20 years. What I know is that this job has always been a virtual-friendly job, even while I was freelance grant writing in 2008 while working on my master's degree in Belgium. Since then, I've been able to secure more than $46 million for organizations in the world of my grant writing agency. That's bananas. Not many individuals can say that they've been able to secure millions of dollars for meaningful causes, and that can be you too. In fact, inside our programs, the Freelance Grant Writer Academy and the Grant Professional Mentorship, in just 2 years, secure more than $225 million in grant funding for their clients and $4 million in their own businesses. Some of these people have never even written grants before, and many of them work with very small nonprofit organizations just asking for $5,000, $10,000 grants. The impact of grant writing is literally the most compounded career in terms of return of investment that you can do and meaning. It's also a career or even a side hustle that you can literally do anywhere in the world, as long as you have internet access. And it's the most rewarding job, in my opinion, as you are literally helping people, causes, programs, and movements by connecting money to mission. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we see the rise of freelance grant writers as the infrastructure of digital work and grants has grown. Being a freelance grant writer has never been so accessible and normalized with having tech like Zoom, Instrumental, Google Docs, and AI. Now let's start our introductory of our series about being a freelance grant writer. Let's first start off. Maybe you're a grant writer. Can grant writers kind of move into freelance grant writing? Yes, staff grant writers can definitely be freelancers. You can have a grant writing career as a freelancer. You may have only considered working as a grant writer inside an organization as a staff position, but the reality is that freelancing as a grant writer can actually open many more doors versus being an in-house staff grant writer. As I mentioned, I've been writing grants for more than 20 years and have worked as both a staff grant writer and as a freelancer. What I have found is that as a freelance grant writer is much, much better. Here are some reasons why that I'm going to talk about today. Number one, you can work with a variety of clients. Number two, you can make good money as a freelance grant writer. Number three, there is a demand for freelance grant writers. Number four, there are meaningful reasons to become a freelance grant writer. And number five, working in an in-house can be kind of toxic. All right, so let's talk about number one. Freelance grant writers work with multiple clients, unlike staff grant writers who have one employer that they are writing grants for. When you are a freelance grant writer, you will write grants for more than one organization. This is really exciting because it means you can use your grant writing skills to have a larger impact in the world. And this may sound a little exaggerated, but it is not. The ripple effect of grant writing is tremendous. The number of times that people have walked up to me and said, Holly, I have a job because of the grant you wrote, is amazing. Gwen inside the academy loves it when people go visit her in New Mexico where she lives, and she can drive them around town saying, my grant that I wrote built that. A grant I wrote built that. Like, so amazing. Working with a variety of clients also gives you more opportunities to secure more grants, which equals more impact. Beyond your community, some freelance grant writers love to focus on one cause area instead and reach a multitude of clients around the world or the nation, serving that specific cause. You can literally decide what change you want to see in the world and then specialize in writing those types of grants or working with those types of organizations and increasing your skills to help them specifically. We've worked with a lot of people that create freelance grant writing businesses around cause areas like social justice movements, reproductive rights, technology, faith-based organizations, and environmental justice, and so much more. Being that freelance grant writing is a virtual job, you can work with clients all over the globe. We see this all the time with folks inside the academy serving education nonprofits in Nigeria, indigenous programs in Canada, and veteran programs in Idaho. It's all over the map. So now let's talk about how much freelance grant writers can actually make. As a freelance grant writer, you can make as much as you want to. Inside the academy, we have folks like Grace, who is very happy just booking out 2 clients on very part-time hours so she could stay home with her young kids. And what's really ironic, she actually made more money than her former full-time job and making $56,000 just with 2 very part-time clients. Then we have folks in the academy like Peyton, who are on track to make $300,000 in her second year of freelance grant writing. And her reason is to bring in the most financial generational wealth in her family and break poverty cycles. So it depends on what your why is and where you are and all of your factors in your own life on how much you can make. These are just freelance grant writers as well, who have no full-time staff in their businesses. Really, the amount you can earn as a freelance grant writer can be scaled up or down based on how many clients you want to have, how much time you want to work, and if you have other team members or not. Because freelance grant writers do charge more than staff grant writers, they can determine their earning potential and their schedule. How much you make as a freelance grant writer is really dependent on your time and how you structure your business. All right, so why should you become a freelance grant writer? There is a growing demand for freelance grant writing, even in 2025. According to an article on LinkedIn, Jobs on the Rise 2025, the fastest growing jobs in the US, being a grant consultant is number 15. No, it doesn't say grant writer. It specifically says grant consultant, i.e. freelancer. Part of the reason behind that is more and more telework, hybrid, or virtual jobs are just desired, and being a grants consultant can be virtual or online. I started out working in a virtual grant writing company in Northern Virginia in 2005. We literally worked in my boss's attic. He had a little pond and everything out in the middle of the Shenandoah Mountains. And he had clients all over the world. Back in the day, we actually used to print and mail in the physical copies of the grants, and I got really familiar at the FedEx office, right? Then in 2007, I was also freelance grant writing at that time in Belgium, where I went to university full-time to work on my master's, and I was able to earn money working as a freelance grant writer and work in around my school schedule and, of course, my very social schedule at the time. And let me just put this into context. This was before Zoom and before the working at home boom created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that we have more infrastructure in place for freelancing, and freelancing then has become much more normalized, specifically with jobs that have always had the ability to be virtual, like freelance grant writing, of course, there's more of an appetite to hire freelance grant writers. And we have a larger need. Over 1.9 million nonprofits are in the United States alone. That was in 2024. And a majority of them, about 88%, have operating budgets of less than $500,000. This means that for many nonprofit organizations, hiring a full-time grant writer might not be in the cards, but they do want to get their foot in the door of grants. So coupling together the number of nonprofit organizations that want to get started with grant writing and the normalcy and infrastructure of freelancing, this has dramatically increased freelance grant writing. And the market is still not saturated, with the need for funding for nonprofits being very broad. The number of nonprofit organizations being formed has continued to grow, and along with it, the number of freelance grant writers needed. Even for larger nonprofits with budgets above $500,000 per year, there is a need to hire freelance grant writers that can solely focus on specific grants, or they just want to streamline their staffing. With the COVID-19 pandemic, many nonprofits dissolved their headquarter leases or downsized as well. When hiring freelance grant writers, they do not need to enlarge facilities with office spaces. This is a huge cost savings as they can operate from smaller areas and save on lease costs, utility costs, computers, training, and more. Additionally, they don't need to pay for fringe benefits like taxes, health insurance, and workers' comp. But you need to figure out those into your pricing as a freelance grant writer. Many of the Academy students started businesses during or after the COVID pandemic, and they have been in this more norms of Zoom, online billing, and so much more. And even during the second term of the Trump administration here in 2025, there's still a growing need for freelance grant writers. As nonprofits may need to be streamlining staff at this point in time, need to write better grants, and they need to have excellent grant and funding strategies. That's where you come into place. And now let's talk about the meaningful work behind being a freelance grant writer and your decision or your why to become one. One of the first things that we have freelance grant writers do inside the Academy is to define their why of starting a business. Why are you actually doing it? As I mentioned, for Grace, it was to have time with her at home with her 2 kids. For Joy, it was a deeply personal, tragic experience of losing her father and realizing that time is short. So she wanted to take the risk of living her entrepreneurial dream. For Jeremy, it was to leave a toxic nonprofit job. And for Lena, it's to transition from retirement into meaningful consultant work. At the most fundamental, you automatically have success just by opening a freelance grant writing business. It takes courage to do something new, and that should be celebrated. Being an entrepreneur is one of the few things in life that make you face yourself. Pricing your services brings up a slew of money trauma issues that you will need to face. Marketing your services makes you sell yourself and get out of your comfort zone. I don't think that being an entrepreneur changes you, but I do think it helps peel back the layers to your more authentic self. And that is an amazing journey from every single student we have in the Academy, from my own personal experience and more. Like, that is the biggest thing I see taken away is people become more confidently themselves. Another universal sign of success, quote unquote, as a freelance grant writer is once your business is operating and giving you the lifestyle that you originally desired when you started your business. You might have said, I want to work less hours and make more income. I want to have more flexibility, right? Like Grace, she makes more money than she did in her 9-to-5, but now she's able to stay home with the kids as well. And that is success. Now that Joy is running a grant writing business, which she has now reached a 6-figure mark and is able to work from home with her 3-year-old, she feels that is success. She is living her dream and proud of that, as she should be. Now that Jeremy is making more as a freelance grant writer than as an executive director at a nonprofit, and is not working evenings and weekends, he is happy and stress-free and successful. And now that Lena has a roadmap and contacts for part-time work as a freelance grant writer before she retires, she is successfully and feels financially secure. Success doesn't have to be earning $100K per year, although it might look like that for you. And of course, one of the reasons you might want to become a freelance grant writer is you want to leave maybe some toxic dynamics at your work or nonprofit. When you are an in-house grant writer, you normally will work on salary. When you are on salary, it may feel financially stable, but it's not. Why? Because you end up working weekends and evenings, and it's very rare that you can take a computer-free vacation. That is because you will get grants thrown at you left and right and never-ending looming deadlines. As a salaried employee, you may feel like you need to be submitting these grants all the time and just to be able to please your boss. In some cases, these grant monies may pay for your job, so there's extra pressure on getting them awarded to keep your job. Why is this toxic? Well, it can lead to 1, overworking, and 2, having too much pressure on your shoulders with your job, measuring the grant awards versus you taking the time to write the grants. When you are freelance grant writing, you can have policies around not working on evenings and weekends and taking out of office days. In fact, as a freelance grant writer, the nonprofit cannot require you to work during certain times. Additionally, as a freelance grant writer, you can put policies in place to establish required lead time to writing any grants. Inside the Academy, students rave about this policy as it has helped end clients throwing grants at them at the last minute. Instead of feeling bad or overwhelmed, they just remind clients of their policies and that they have a 3 to 4 week lead policy or a 6 to 8 week lead policy in writing grants, as outlined in their contracts. This eliminates working on weekends and evenings on a rush grant, and it also helps you plan out your application calendar better. And guess what? Write better grants because you have time. All in all, now is the time to become a freelance grant writer. As a wrap up, you can work with a variety of clients. You can make good money as a freelance grant writer. There is a demand for freelance grant writers still, even in 2020. There are meaningful reasons to become a freelance grant writer, and working in-house at a traditional job can be very toxic. So watch out for our next video on what it takes to start a freelance grant writing business. And make sure you subscribe. Once again, I'm Holly Rustick, with the CEO and founder of the Freelance Grant Writer Academy and the Grant Professional Mentorship.